The city of Richmond, Virginia, is set to remove its final Confederate monument later this week. And this is an article at NBC News. Thought I'd share this with you because, as you know, we talk about anti-censorship here on the channel. In fact, that's the reason I chose the name Cultural Confederacy. It's a rallying cry against censorship. But this is another feel-good move by these SJW types to cleanse America of its original sin of slavery and white supremacy. But as it turns out, strange irony here, as it turns out, General A.P. Hill, this monument to General A.P. Hill, which they want to remove, turns out that General A.P. Hill was against slavery. He didn't own slaves, and he was at odds with Stonewall Jackson. So it says here, Confederate monument set to be removed from Virginia Capitol. Work to relocate Richmond's final city-owned Confederate monument should start this week after a judge refused a request to delay the removal of the statue of General A.P. Hill from its prominent spot in Virginia's capital, an official said. And you gotta love the name of this judge. This is your typical activist judge. Richmond Circuit Court Judge David Eugene Cheek Sr. last week rejected a motion from 4 indirect descendants of Hill, who was killed in the final days of the Civil War, to stop the city's removal plans. Though the process of removing the monument from a busy intersection should start Monday, it's unclear if it would be removed entirely by the end of the week, City Deputy Chief Administrative Officer Robert Steidle told WRIC-TV. Now here's a kicker, folks. The city, a one-time capital of the Confederacy, began removing its many other Confederate monuments more than 2 years ago amid the racial justice protests that followed George Floyd's murder. Question here. What does George Floyd have to do with the Confederacy? Absolutely nothing. The Confederacy died, 150, 160 years ago? And who's to say that by removing these monuments, there's not going to be some type of incident in the future between minority and police? That is the stupidity of this argument from these SJW types. They want to remove all these statues, and they think by removing all these statues, somehow they're going to purge our society and create this utopia. Can I let you in on a little secret? Mankind isn't perfect. Mankind's never going to be perfect. You're always going to have racial strife, differences of opinion. You're always going to have ignorant people, whether they be white, black, Hispanic, Asian, doesn't matter. It's because mankind is flawed. But somehow, this monument of General A.P. Hill is related to the murder of George Floyd. Among the notable monuments removed was an imposing statue of General Stonewall Jackson, again, who was at odds with General A.P. Hill, which was taken down from a concrete pedestal in 2020 along Richmond, Virginia's famed Monument Avenue. Goes on to say here, and they've got a picture, by the way, of the General A.P. Hill monument, taken on January 6th, mind you, January 6th. Goes on to say, Richmond officials decided to convey the monuments to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia. But efforts to remove the Hill statue have been complicated because the general's remains were buried beneath the monument in 1891. And that's the other part of this is so disturbing. They want to remove all these monuments and the remains of the person who might be buried underneath that monument. That's sick, folks. That's really, really sick. But more to the point here. So you're going to remove these monuments and send them to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia. If you're African American, would you be offended by that? That they're going to send this Confederate monument, which people are claiming was a tribute to Jim Crow and white supremacy slavery. Would you be offended by them sending this statue to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia? The indirect descendants and city have agreed that Richmond's plan to move Hill's remains to a cemetery in Culpeper should be allowed to move forward. But these descendants contend that they have control over the statue and want it relocated to Cedar Mountain Battlefield near the cemetery instead of it being sent to the museum. Cheek ruled against them in October. In the most recent hearing, Cheek denied their motion to stay the removal of the Hill monument while the descendants pressed an appeal with the Virginia Court of Appeals. The city has spent at least $1.8 million, let me repeat that, $1.8 million, removing other city-owned monuments, the Richmond Times-Dispatch reported. Shouldn't that $1.8 million have gone to help minority communities rather than taking down all these statues? Oh, we never thought of that. Cheek determined that delaying the removal would result in additional cost and retain a potential traffic hazard. The monument will be kept in storage, I'm sure it will, while the case goes through the expected appeal process, Steidle said in court last week. Many Confederate statues in Virginia were erected decades after the Civil War, during the Jim Crow era, when states imposed new segregation laws, and during the Lost Cause movement, when historians and others tried to depict the South's rebellion as a fight to defend states' rights, not slavery. Yet again, the statue they want to take down of General A.P. Hill, General A.P. Hill did not support slavery. He did not own slaves. Now, his father did, his relatives did, but he did not own slaves, and he did not support slavery. And I might add, and I mentioned this in a video way back, that during the time of Jim Crow and these statues being put up, you had Italians, Germans, Asians in the United States that were interned during World War II. We were fighting against Germany, Italy, Japan. We were at war. You had huge anti-German, anti-Italian, anti-Irish sentiment in this country. Actually, in many parts of the world during that time period. But should we also remove anything having to do with the city of Boston? Any statues or monuments that pay tribute to the city of Boston or possibly Los Angeles? Because in 1931, mentioned this before, in 1931, California passed a law banning marriage between Asians and whites. Back in 1890, the city of San Francisco passed an ordinance that all of its Chinese residents had to move to another part of the city within 6 months. If they didn't do so, they would be jailed or imprisoned. So acting like the South is just the guilty party here is ludicrous. When you go back and you check the record and you find out that there have always been these conflicts, not just in the United States, always been these conflicts between these different ethnic groups all over the world. Going back to antiquity. Maybe we should remove the Parthenon or the Colosseum. Those seeking removal of the statues, particularly in Richmond, the one-time capital of the Confederacy, said that they would service notice that the city is no longer a place with symbols of oppression and white supremacy. Where's proof of this? Where is the proof that all the South cared about, all the Confederacy cared about, was slavery? The word slavery is not even in the preamble to their Constitution. Yes, they did legally recognize and protect slavery. But you're not going to find the word slavery or mention of slave labor in the preamble to the CSA Constitution. If that's all the South was worried about, why isn't the word slavery or the phrase slave labor in the preamble to their Constitution? So I thought I'd share this article with you, again at NBC News. City of Richmond, Virginia, to remove its final Confederate monument later this week. And this is a story that came out today. Confederate monument set to be removed from Virginia Capitol. So if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. or you can find me at Twitter, Culture Confederacy at Twitter. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing we call the United States, and I'll catch you next time.